Yeah, so very good afternoon, all of you again. And my name is Deepak Dhawan. I am Program Manager at Hans Adel Foundation India. And I welcome you all to our session today, which is organized by Hans Adel Foundation and led by our first cohort of Young South Asia Network. So just some before we delve into the topic of the session today, I just want to let you know a few house rules that please keep your mics muted. And if you have any questions, so please feel free to leave your questions in the comments. And during the Q&A session, and also the breakout session, you will also get the chance to directly speak to our experts, to our fellows, and they will be happy to address any questions or remarks you might have. Right. So without further ado, I would like to now invite our head of Southeast and Southeast Asia Division, Mr. Stefan Burkhardt, who is joining us today from Munich. Yeah. So the floor is yours, Stefan.
Thanks, Deepak, for the introduction. Good afternoon to everyone. A very warm welcome from Munich to each and every one of you who has joined us today for this special session. And many thanks, of course, to our incredible YSAN fellows for their hard work and tireless efforts in making today's event possible. It is through their passion and commitment that we are able to come together for this meaningful dialogue on the significant issue of air pollution in South Asia. Please allow me a moment to introduce the HSF, the Hans Adel Foundation. Founded in '67, the HSF is a German political foundation based in Munich, Bavaria. The HSF is affiliated to the Christian Social Union, and for nearly half a century, we have been engaged in development cooperation projects in currently 90 projects in 75 countries worldwide. Under their motto, in service of democracy, peace, and development, we are committed to promoting democratic and civic education through capacity building programs, social political debates, dialogue with various interest groups and stakeholders, and the development of solution strategies. In South Asia, we implement projects through our country offices in India and Pakistan, focusing on a wide range of topics such as sustainable development, good governance, federalism and decentralization, non-traditional security issues, water resource management, environmental protection, creation of safe spaces for vulnerable groups, and promotion of regional understanding in areas of common interest and challenges. To further strengthen social political dialogue between multipliers from South Asia and Germany, we launched in 2022 the Young South Asia Network, YSAN, to bring together young and promising future leaders from different backgrounds, such as science, politics, media, and administration, from across South Asia to conduct a multilateral discourse on common challenges. The theme or the topic of the first cohort and the first and current cohort focuses on urban sustainability. And one of the highlights has been the study visit to Germany in 2022, which included meetings, field visits, and excursions to research centers, water and waste treatment plants, municipalities, sustainable offices, and the German parliament. Germany, being renowned for its innovative approach to urban planning and sustainability, the fellows gained new insights on sustainable urban practices and led discussions with experts and policymakers here in Germany. Building on this year, we gave our fellows the opportunity to present cross-country and cross-institution perspectives on thematic areas, including but not limited to urban sustainability, climate change, and water management. The first alumni session, which happened in April, focused on the effective role of local urban governance in addressing issues such as heat stress and urban flooding in South Asia. Today, we convene for a second dialogue, focused on tackling air pollution in South Asia, mobilizing for change. The numbers were already stated in the invitation, but I would like to repeat them as they are shocking. South Asia is in the midst of an air pollution crisis. Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India were ranked as the third, fifth, and eighth most polluted countries in the world, respectively in 22. 37 out of 40 most polluted cities in the world are in the region. And 60% of the population lives in areas that exceed the WHO air quality standard. With inputs from YSAN fellows and other experts, we will discuss the role of the local urban bodies in effectively promoting air quality and eco-innovation for improving air quality. The approach needs to be solution-oriented and socially just in order to tackle the massive issue of air pollution. I would also like to emphasize that all the recommendations and key takeaways from today's session will be incorporated into a policy playbook, contributing to concrete action plan for a cleaner and healthier future. The change and solutions needed must come from talented people like our YSAN fellows, and of course from everyone else who feels driven to it. As HSF, we are happy to give you the room or the platform for gathering information and to express yourself, for giving you the room to connect. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you, and I wish you a fruitful discussion that awaits us today. So I will give back to Deepak.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stefan, for your remarks, for introducing YSAN and HSF to our audience today, who is joining us also from across South Asia, different time zones. Yeah, and moving on next, I would like to now introduce our distinguished experts today, with whom you will be given the opportunity to interact in the breakout sessions later, and also our fellows here from Young South Asia Network, who will be presenting some case studies from their cities. And just allow me a moment to share my screen for the introduction. And I hope everybody can see my screen now. Just 1 second.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, so our first expert today is Mr. Abid Omar, who is the founder of Pakistan Air Quality Initiative. So Abid, he has just to briefly introduce him. So he has a social mission. How can I help improve the environment of Pakistan? He sees the air pollution emergency in Pakistan as a silver lining, an opportunity to drive environmental awareness and change that will clean up Pakistan for good. A key indicator of environmental issues is pollution that affects our daily life, especially air pollution. He found that there is no data for this, so he founded the Pakistan Air Quality Initiative in 2016 to monitor air quality across major urban areas of Pakistan and to provide awareness for air pollution and health issues. Therefore, provide impetus for change, and Abid advocates for reducing air pollution by providing open access to air quality data through workshops and conferences, and hopes to publish statement findings in a scientific journal. So the Pakistan Air Quality Initiative provides crowdsource air quality data actually for Pakistan. And it's a community driven initiative to set up low cost, real-time monitors to capture air quality data and thereby increase social awareness. It provides also tools, information to people who need to thrive in polluted environments. So ladies and gentlemen, he was our first expert. And secondly, now introducing Karthik, Ganesan, Fellow and Director, Research Coordination from Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW, based in Delhi. And he's an engineer by training, and he is some ongoing and planned research and ensures cross-team coherence for Council's research direction and imperatives. He also has done lots of internal advisor across research teams and creates institutional platforms that spur innovation and in partnership with other senior researchers. which continues to strengthen the Council's foundation for world-class research. And he has played a pivotal role in conceptualizing and executing some of Council's biggest successes and collaborative efforts, such as the Access, IRIS surveys, and the associated studies, the GHG platform initiative, the first full-fledged office program based out of Lucknow. And he continues to be the active researcher with the power sector and the air pollution work programs. And he holds a master's degree in public policy from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. He holds an undergraduate degree in civil engineering and MTech in infrastructure engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. And of course, you will be also hearing from our expert about their current role, their current ongoing projects during the deep dive sessions later. And yeah, moving on next. So our first fellow, Ayesha, who will be presenting today. Yeah, so she's a sustainability advocate working to make cities environmentally compatible and socially equitable. She's currently engaged with the Think to Do tank, where her focus is on evidence-based policy advocacy, leveraging the potential of youth and creating synergy among various stakeholders to accelerate the transition towards a climate resilient and nature inclusive urban future. And she is also a member of various networks, including the Energy Transition Platform South Asia and the Pakistan-German Renewable Energy Forum that focuses on fostering sustainable development through innovation and international cooperation. And Ayesha holds the degree, a master's degree in development studies and bachelor's degree in economics and political science. So in our lineup of speakers, so next we have Ayesha, who is also our fellow, and she is environmental lawyer turned development professional who believes in the cause of environment protection and sustainable development. She aspires to achieve her aim via policy implementation, and in her previous days as a lawyer, she realized that while environmental law is one tool to protect environment, policy implementation is definitely another. So as part of the air pollution action group where she is currently engaged, she's responsible for consulting government stakeholders and implementing policies on ground. And with her specialization in environmental laws and on-ground policy implementation, she aims to achieve sustainable development and establish effective governance mechanisms. And yeah, next we have Raghavendra, who is the co-founder of Dokos Recyclers, social enterprise based in Kathmandu. And his enterprise offers services to retain useful resources within the economy by establishing materials recovery facility to process segregated dry waste and Nepal's first e-waste management facility, which allows a wealth of secondary raw materials. Alongside working on strategies to guide Nepal's foray into a circular economy with the concepts like extended producer responsibility, bringing stakeholders together to mandate regulatory framework for businesses in Nepal to be part of the circular economy and to collaborate in the waste value chain. Yeah. So we'll be hearing from our fellows very soon. But yeah, now I would like to give the mic to Ayesha, our YSAN fellow, who will be briefly introducing the session today. Yeah. So
Thank
over
you
to
so
you,
much.
Ayesha.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you for the introduction as well. Like Stefan already mentioned, we all know that South Asia is in the midst of an air pollution crisis, and major countries, the most populous countries in the region, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, are among the top 10 most polluted countries in the world. And other South Asian countries, including Nepal and Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, are also battling with this issue. Around 60% of the region's population is living in areas that exceed the WHO air quality standard, and around 2 million premature deaths occur in the region annually because of air pollution. In many cities, including Lahore and New Delhi, smog has become the fifth season. And with the winters approaching, we see that the governments in the South Asian region are preparing to fight the issue of smog. But in addition to paradigm shift within policy making and implementation circles, leveraging innovation and technology is imperative for long-term and long-lasting results. To this end, the role of youth is crucial as their quality of life is intricately linked to how we're collectively able to tackle this challenge. This session, therefore, is being organized with the aim to foster dialogue among youth and to learn from each other the ways in which we can ensure that countries in South Asia quit topping the list of most polluted countries in the world. Now my colleague Mehak is going to give you an overview of what today's session looked like. Over to you, Mehak.
Thank you, Ayesha. Thank you for throwing some light on the issue of air pollution. I would be describing the event flow for everyone's reference. Like Ayesha mentioned, this is a platform where we would be discussing, different fellows would be discussing their case studies. So the first thing that would happen in the event is the presentation by fellows. The order would be as follows. Raghav from Nepal would be presenting first, followed by Ayesha from Pakistan, and then myself from India. The presentation would go on for 45 minutes, which is to say that each and every fellow will get 15 minutes to speak. After the presentation is over, we will have a question answer round for 15 minutes. The audience is open to ask us the questions. You can either raise your hands or type your questions in the chat. Us, along with the experts, that is Mr. Karthik, Ganesan and Mr. Abid, Omar, would be happy to answer all your questions. This would go on for 15 minutes. After the question answer round, we would get into deep dive sessions. These deep dive sessions are essentially designed in the form of breakout room sessions. So all of you will get an option to choose one of the breakout room sessions. The first breakout room session that we have is of policy response to air pollution. And the second breakout room session is about eco-innovation. So you can choose one of the breakout room sessions, and over there, you would be brainstorming over certain solutions that you feel can be adopted and implemented in Global South. Mr. Karthik Ganesan would be heading the policy response session, and Mr. Abid Umar would be heading the eco-innovation session. You would be given a situation or a prompt to discuss upon, and from there, we take on our further discussion. After the breakout room session, we would again have a question answer round where our experts would be happy to answer all your questions. Again, you can either type your questions in the chat or you can raise your hand and you will be allowed to verbally address your question. And then with this, we would end our event. That's all. Thank you. Over to you, Raghav.
I'm Raghavendra, co-founder at Dokos Recyclers, social enterprise in waste management in Kathmandu, Nepal. My presentation is going to focus on municipal solid waste management and its correlation with air pollution and how it is a critical issue in many of the South Asian countries. One of the often neglected sources of contributing to regional air pollution is garbage burning. It is mostly related to numerous yet small open, uncontrolled fires burning diverse kind of fuels and making it difficult to kind of quantify and, actually get the data on emissions. So it's quite difficult to actually really pinpoint in terms of data. The agendas that we'll focus on today will be understanding open waste burning, challenges of urban local bodies in managing this situation, role of extended producer responsibility, and also case study from India in how EPR is helping prevent waste management.
Raghav, we can't see anything. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, Raghav, could you please share your screen again? It's a blank actually.
Just a minute. Is it visible?
Not yet.
Raghav, you may want to try.
Yeah,
now we can see
now.
now. Yeah, we can see now.
Okay. Let me know if there's an issue. So yeah, talking about the agenda that I'll be focusing on, we'll do a case study from Nepal, a rural mountain project that we executed, and also followed by the success story of biogas in Nepal. So let's start the discussion with a basic definition of open waste burning. So basically, domestic open waste burning practices occur mainly in developing countries, mostly in South Asian region and African region. where waste collection is becoming a significant problem for waste management in local authorities. Due to inefficient waste management system, burning of waste is common practice at collection points and the dump sites, resulting in significant air pollution. Besides open dumping, landfills are also a major contribution to air pollution, as most of the landfills are not designed in a way to capture methane gas or other pollutants. Some researchers have reviewed the potential emissions and health risk associated with waste burning and emission factors, but only a few countries have detailed data regarding open burning activities. The average composition that is being burned mainly consists of organic waste, followed by plastics and others such as paper, e-waste, leather, or textile, and rubber. The burning of electrical equipment such as insulated wires, cables, circuit boards is also the highest source of dioxins, which is one of the cheapest way to extract materials, mostly practiced by the informal waste sector. The challenge for the local urban body is quite intense in this case, because as we see in the slide, that the sources of waste are quite diverse, from household, commercial, institutional, industrial, healthcare. And now each and every sector requires a specific solution to it. And we also know that the nature of solid waste changes as societies get richer and more urbanized. Instead of biodegradable waste, households generate more of quantities of plastics, paper, metal, and other non-biodegradable waste. And the quantity of waste on per capita basis increases as well as wealth increases in society. So major South Asian mega cities have crossed this crust of waste trajectory in many of its urban areas where waste generation has increased exponentially. Also, what is concerned is not only the quantity increasing, but the composition of waste, which is changing from high percentage of biodegradable to non-biodegradable. So for the urban local body, it's a big challenge designing efficient, tailored waste management solutions relevant to their local conditions and streams of waste. This is a recent study conducted by waste management in municipalities of Nepal, where they kind of conducted survey in 232 municipalities, and it kind of points out that the burning is being practiced by almost 32.1% of the municipalities, and this is quite an alarming figure if we really see it in a broader perspective. And similarly is the case with other South Asian countries. Almost all cities in South Asia region practice some form of open dumping. And open dumping means, again, landfills are not sanitary, so that's why we considered it as open dumping. But cities are increasingly developing sanitary landfills, but still at a very slow pace. So waste coverage in urban areas in South Asian cities is 77%, as you see on the slide. And this is a quite significant figure because the rest of the 23% in urban area, the waste is not being collected. So that could potentially be one of the main sources of waste burning. Similarly, on the right pie, we see that 75% of waste is being dumped in unsanitary landfill. That means a major cause for methane gas emission and other let's say, poisonous gases. One of the most, let's say, common reasons for this happening, at least in Nepal's context, is despite the risk associated with open burning, waste burning cannot be pinned down to one or two causes, rather than there are an array of causes such as service aspects, social aspects, financial issues, starting from issue with services, wherein coverage of the waste collection service is a major choke point, because though urban cities, the core cities have the services, but as soon as we go a bit outside the city, the services are not there. So as soon as the service is not there, open burning and dumping becomes one of the major reason for air pollution. Open burning is also free of charge for a lot of, let's say, people perceive it as a way of disposing waste. As paying fees for collection service becomes a challenge for certain communities. Even there are policies for reporting waste burning. It's kind of burdensome for the whole process to take place. And many times open burning has just become tradition for a lot of communities. And also legal implications are very difficult to implement in terms of open burning, as it's very difficult to track and pinpoint where exactly it's happening and follow up with the processes in it. This is one of a fine example where we as a waste management company, we feel that source segregation is fundamental and non-negotiable condition for sustainable waste management. Only through efficient source segregation have cities been able to treat their waste scientifically and reduce dumping in landfills. This example is from Indore municipality in India, where a collection tipper has been fabricated to have 6 separate spaces for biodegradable, non-biodegradable plastics, domestic hazardous and electronic waste in each tipper. The moment we are able to achieve this, we can treat almost each and every kind of waste properly. We now are going to explore the role of extended producer responsibility and how it really supports the whole cause of air pollution and waste management. So EPR involves producers taking responsibility for management of their products after becoming waste, including collection, pre-treatment, for example, sorting, dismantling, energy recovery, or final disposal. So EPR policies are basically enforced upon companies as per their production volume, where they have to collect back the same amount of waste that they have generated in each and every year. Why EPR is linked with air pollution? As it helps to fulfill the financial gap created to manage difficult types of waste, such as low-value plastics or multi-layered plastics, even electronic waste applies in the same context, which normally is not collected back or burned easily due to low incentive for collection, or there's not enough resources for right treatment of the waste. And this is how EPR has evolved over the years, like countries like ours, Nepal, which is right now in phase 1, where it's just become an agenda for discussion. India is already kind of in stage 2, where the systems are designed in and are in place for operationalization, and there's a body to enforce it. And countries in the EU are kind of in advanced stage, where it has already started taking shape of a true circular economy, where every flow of a product life cycle is pre-planned and based and interlinked to the end destination. And this kind of solves a lot of challenges being faced by the whole waste management sector. We'll just see a case example from India, because that's the closest that we can refer to, which has implemented EPR since 2016, and it's 2023. So we can see the progress that they have made, because a producer or an importer or a brand owner in India has to recover 100% of what they produce in each year, meaning it has to collect 100% of waste sent to the market next year based on the sales figure that they report in their tax filings. So this is just for plastic. And now we can see that they have categorized plastics also into multiple categories, and they're treating it differently. Similarly, they have also expanded EPR into other waste categories like batteries, e-waste, tires, and also textiles in upcoming years. So basically, EPR is a mechanism which can be implemented in managing all kinds of waste, and it helps waste management companies to actually really solve the problem of collection, post-processing also. Now we'll do a case study. We'll look into a case study of a rural municipality in Nepal, in Dhawan. It's one of a rural municipality, and it has a population of 15,000. So basically, a project was designed just at a cost of $17,000, and it was planned in such a way that a community recycling center can actually prove to be a end-to-end solution for for rural municipality. And same case applies to bigger municipalities, where material recovery facility of a larger size solves a lot of problems. So with 3 months of operation, 3,000 kgs of waste was collected and managed. Otherwise, the same waste would normally be dumped, or most likely it would be burned. The new experiment, what we have done over here, or what we see, is even the landfill waste or non-recyclable waste is being kind of baled into compact form so that it can be transported to a nearest cement factories. The recyclables are also baled, and it's supplied to basically a recycling factory. So basically, a zero landfill concept has been implemented in such a rural place, so it can be managed in urban spaces also. We also have a success story from Nepal in regards to biogas. It was implemented almost 3 decades back, and now almost 0.3 million rural households are using this technology for actually reducing, again, organic waste into other forms of energy. Because of many benefits of adopting biogas, the government of Nepal has actually made biogas technology a priority. Large-scale biogas plants have potential to fulfill two of country's most pressing needs, that is effective organic waste management and also clean supply of energy. My last slide is basically on takeaways from the overall presentation. So some efforts are proposed to reduce open waste burning, and one of the first one is raising public awareness through local campaigns, environmental education, environmental incentives, and regular enforcement are needed to reduce burning of waste. Secondly, more robust policies and law enforcement such as open waste burning bans and EPR for a better solid waste management systems are needed. Third, improving waste collection services is quite essential to reduce people's willingness to burn and direct waste disposal to the environment. Fourth, community and informal sectors actors play quite an important role in promoting of recycling and activities at the level, which can enhance the waste management services. That's all from my end. Thank you. Back to you, Mehak.
Please let me know when you can share my screen. Deepak, is it visible?
Yeah, yes, Ayesha, we can see your screen.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the role of transportation in deteriorating the air quality in Pakistan, and I will specifically be discussing the case of Lahore. I will also talk about some of the steps that are being taken to reduce the sector's footprint and what are the low-hanging fruits that we can grab. Okay. So Pakistan was ranked as the third most polluted country in 2022. And the average PM 2.5 concentration exceeded the WHO guidelines by over 10 times. Two cities in Pakistan, namely Lahore and Peshawar, were ranked among the top 10 most polluted cities in the world. The deteriorating air quality is adversely affecting the economic and social indicators in Pakistan. And it is estimated that air pollution could impose around a 6.5% GDP loss in the country. When we talk about the health impacts of air pollution in the country, it is estimated that air pollution accounted for around 235,000 premature deaths in 2019, and that it reduces the average life by 2.7 years in the country. When the causes of air pollution were explored in Pakistan, the results revealed that the transport sector has a huge contribution. In fact, the sector is responsible for around 43% of air pollutants in Punjab, which is the most populous province in the country. The government of Pakistan has recently drafted the National Clean Air Policy 2023, and transformation of the transport sector has been highlighted as one of the priority areas in this. Now, moving on to Lahore. Lahore is one of the most populous cities in Pakistan, and it was ranked as the most polluted city in 2022. And the PM 2.5 concentrations exceeded the WHO guidelines by over 10 times. Smog has become a regular feature during winter season, and Lahore is experiencing unhealthy air quality as we speak. According to the recent anti-smog directives, a proposal has been submitted to the government where a complete shutdown of social and economic activities will be observed from 18th October on every Wednesday during the smog season. So Lahore is expected to have COVID-style lockdowns on Wednesdays till this season lasts. And suspension of economic and social activities during smog season, it's not something that is new. It has been happening for quite some time now, and it has led to significant productivity losses as well. Smog is also exacerbating physical illnesses, including respiratory and cardiac diseases. And poor air quality is triggering allergies in this city. It is observed that health-related spending also rises significantly during smog season, and air pollution is estimated to wipe out nearly 6 years from life expectancies of an average individual in this city. Not only that, but smog is also responsible for causing a lot of mental stress amongst city dwellers. And this is something that we usually do not focus on. Plus, poor visibility increases the chances of hazardous incidents such as road accidents. And another thing that has been reported is that the efficiency of solar panels goes significantly down during the sports season. Now, the urban unit in Lahore conducted a study to analyze the main sources of air pollution, and the results revealed that transport sector is responsible for a whopping 83% of air pollution in the city. While crop burning, which is popularly considered to be the main cause of smog, is responsible for around 3.9%. And industrial sector remains the second largest source of air pollution in the city. The reason why transport sector has such a huge footprint is because the number of vehicles in Lahore has increased exponentially. This is especially the case for the 2 and 3 wheelers. The sector is responsible for around 71% of fuel consumption. Now, the quality of fuel that is being used is also very low, and it is mostly the Euro 2 standard, which has a high content of substances which lead to air pollution. Even in cases where better quality fuel is being used, since a large segment of the vehicle fleet is old, full potential of improved fuels cannot be harnessed, as these vehicles, they do not have the required technology to actually do so. And many of the vehicles do not even have catalytic converters, or some of the owners, they take out the catalytic converters as well. Now, why exploring why private vehicles are increasing in the city, we see that the city is expanding at an alarming pace, and the public transport facilities are unable to keep pace. So many of the city dwellers rely on individual motorized modes of mobility. But the massive increase in vehicles is also leading to traffic congestion, which in itself leads to a lot of emissions, as idle vehicles, when their engine is turned on, they produce a lot of emissions and thus negatively impact the air quality in that area. Now moving on to some of the initiatives that have been taken to reduce the sector's contribution in Lahore. We see that the government has taken steps to expand the public transport facility in recent years. The Metro bus service and the Orange Line train have been introduced. And while feeder routes have also been introduced, they still lack an integrated network that offer first and last mile connectivity. So that is something that needs to be prioritized. And the feeder routes, they should be expanded to suit the needs of women, the differently abled individuals, the older population, and the other vulnerable groups. And efforts need to be made to make these facilities weather compatible as well, because summers in Lahore are extreme. Then significant progress is being made towards electrification of 2 and 3 wheelers, as they are a huge source of pollution in the city. So chargeable and swappable batteries are being offered as a solution to avoid significant charging times. Efforts are also being made to scale up the use of EVs and to introduce charging facilities. However, one thing that needs to be accounted for is that the source of EVs should be clean. Otherwise, we'll just be shifting the footprint from one sector to the other. Some other steps are also being taken, such for improving the traffic flow. For example, barriers are removed from high congestion points to facilitate vehicular flow during smog season. Similarly, heavy fines are being imposed on smoke emitting vehicles. And the government is trying to make an effort to monitor the fuel quality in this city. However, given the scale of the issue we're facing, we do need to scale up all these efforts. Now, moving on to some of the low-hanging fruits that can accelerate the transformation. As far as policy is concerned, the government needs to prioritize low-emission modes of mobility, such as public transport, pedestrian walkways, use of bicycles, instead of actually going for the car-centric development model that has traditionally prevailed. But in that case, we also have to make sure that weather appropriate bicycle walkways and pedestrian-only zones are introduced. and without actually leading to the green gentrification or employing construction techniques which will then increase air pollution. To this end, expanding the green cover is also important to make the environment conducive for walking and for using a bicycle. And green cover will also shield people from scorching heat in summers and will also improve the air quality and actually encourage people to prefer outdoor environment instead of using their cars. Regulations such as high occupancy lanes, paid parking, fines on parking on green belts, etc., could also be used to discourage the use of vehicles, especially for short trips. The government also needs to facilitate the private sector in introducing solutions for shared mobility. And also the government needs to support the EV sector while, like I mentioned before, focusing on how it can source clean energy and ensure proper e-waste disposal. At the same time, the government also needs to come up with a plan for phasing out old vehicles in a socially just manner, because blanket bans usually lead to green gentrification. So low-cost alternatives should be introduced before banning old fleets or use of old vehicles altogether. Then we can also try to prioritize eco driving behavior, which basically leads to a reduction of sector's contribution without any changes at all. So, for example, if you avoid high speed, or if you do not remove the catalytic converter, or maintaining proper level of engine oils and changing the oil on time, or avoiding underinflated tires and avoiding overloading, especially in case of rickshaws, all of this can create an impact without actually incurring any additional costs. So this is something that the government and the civil society and we also as community need to practice. Then moving on to the technological and digital solutions, they can be leveraged for creating a multiplier impact. So for example, efficient traffic management systems which prevent congestion and offer low cost and efficient route optimization, especially to freight and rickshaws, they should be put in place. Then we also need to focus on safe and affordable carpooling options, especially for the vulnerable group and for women. And it is very important to actually put these in place, because otherwise the vulnerable group will be unable to leverage these solutions. Then e-bike sharing is also something that can be encouraged. And then like we did in COVID, hybrid education and work models, because that will actually reduce the burden on roads. So with that, we can discuss more options during the breakout sessions. And with that, I give the floor to Mehak to continue. Thank you, everyone.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, Mehak, your screen is visible.
All right, thank you. So today I would like to talk about air pollution, and I'd be presenting a case study of Delhi. I've chosen Delhi primarily for the reason that it is one of the most polluted cities in the world. It was ranked at 4th position. But the good part about the city is that it has continuously put in efforts to reduce its AQI levels, and also it has put in efforts at urban local government body and level and the citizen engagement level. So I'd like to introduce my topic by saying that yes, Delhi is one of the most polluted cities. We experienced the AQI of 225 in 2018, but now it has reduced to 209 in 2022. With the increasing problem of air pollution in South Asia, we've also noticed that it is more of a transboundary issue. I would agree to that. But then the receptor of this problem is essentially the people. So that is why we would like to talk about the local practices. And my presentation would focus more on the local context of air pollution and how we can tackle air pollution on ground. Moving on, throwing some light on what's happening in Delhi. Okay, so these two tables essentially represent the sectoral contribution of air pollution. On the left side, we have the source apportionment study. And on the right side, we have the emission inventory. But both the tables suggest that dust is one of the highest contributors, followed by industry and construction activities. So these are the major sectors, these are the major sources which are contributing to air pollution. And I would agree that this is the problem in Delhi. Moving on, just a second. Yeah. Moving on, I'd like to throw some light upon what Delhi government is actually doing about the problem. All of us would have heard about the National Clean Air Program that is being run in India. And this is a 5-year action plan, which has a national level target of reducing pollution by 20 to 30% by the year 2024. In response to this, Delhi has drafted a graded action plan, which is mostly implemented during the winter season. Another problem with the mindset of citizens as well as the government is that it sees air pollution as a seasonal problem. It is not seeing air pollution as a year-long problem. The air pollution exists throughout the year, but we talk about air pollution when winter season comes, or we talk about air pollution when stubble burning happens. And the graded action plan, ironically, is also implemented during this period only. Some of the measures that are being taken under graded action plan are as follows. There is installation of continuous ambient air quality monitoring stations. There are about 40 stations in Delhi currently. Then to settle the dust, we ensure that there is water sprinkling on roads. Then Delhi government is also focused upon greening. Although greening aspect has some issues, but Delhi government is continuously putting in efforts to do vertical greening of pillars or flyover greening. Then there is deployment of safeguards during construction and demolition activities. And recently, Delhi government has started placing its focus on finding of violators of CND activities. Then another step that Delhi government has taken is prevention of biomass burning. And in my experience, I've seen that Delhi government deployed some environment marshals, and those environment marshals were locally focusing on biomass greening. They would just go on ground and detect the cases of biomass burning, because the biomass burning happens in the night. So government ensured that it's like a flying squad. The people are there on the field and they are detecting such cases and they are reporting such cases. Then the paving of the road and the roadsides. Like I mentioned, road dust is one of the major contributors. So even the smallest problem of pothole can contribute to the air pollution that one cannot contemplate. Then switching to PNG by industries, and then procurement of MRS, which is mechanical road sweeping machines. Now, typical examples, typical measures that Delhi government has taken in this context. The first one is the anti-dust campaign. It has been recently launched in Delhi. The campaign would again focus on the road dust, and it would focus on water sprinkling on roads. It would focus on paving of roads. And then there is CND waste modeling. Like there is a proper garbage modeling, and the famous case studies of Indore, where we saw that garbage was properly channelized and there was source segregation. Similarly, Delhi government has recently taken a measure to channelize the CND waste. For this, Delhi government has created certain collection points. So the CND waste from the source would go to the collection points, and from the collection points, it would go to the CND waste recycling plant. So Delhi government is trying to fix this particular chain. My organization in particular is working on this project. Then followed by this, there is EV policy, which is electric vehicles policy. We've seen the successful adoption of electrical buses in Delhi. Then to combat traffic decongestion, we have seen that there was an odd and eve scheme, which was implemented by the Delhi government. Although that particular scheme also has certain drawbacks, but Delhi government is putting in conscious efforts to implement certain strategies to practice traffic decongestion. Then there is greening and afforestation. There are plantation drives which are happening. Then there is installation of AQI monitors. And there is a portal by Delhi Pollution Control Committee for self-assessment. So the entities can evaluate their pollution load, which is being emitted by their own business, which is probably commercial and which is mostly commercial in nature. So these are the typical measures by the Delhi government, and this is the response which Delhi government has adopted to air pollution. Moving on, what are the gaps in implementing these strategies? Other than the financial crunch, which I believe all the cities in Global South face, the first problem is the absence of a review mechanism. Even if the Delhi government says that we will fix this, there is no way we can review it. And this is true for most of the governments, not only Delhi. So there is an absence of review mechanism. There should be some accountability. Second, there is low public awareness, which also results in loss of citizens' support. This is from my experience in construction and demolition project only. So there are rules called C&D waste management rules which were devised in 2016. We saw that citizens, one, they are not aware of the rules. Second, they are not even aware of the penalties that can be imposed on them if they don't follow these rules. So yes, the reinforcement is either negative or positive, but people are not aware of it. And hence people are not too much into, consciously resolving air pollution. Then third, there is lack of political will. Like I mentioned, it is not a year-round issue for the government. It is a seasonal issue for the government. So that is a major problem here. Then there is a lack of interagency coordination. There are different departments and agencies in Delhi. So for example, if one agency is focusing on, say, paving of the road, then there would be a jurisdictional issue, which is my next gap that I've highlighted here. So there are some interagency coordination issues, and there are some jurisdictional issues, which actually result in loss of ownership. So one department or one agency wouldn't know, okay, that I need to fix this issue. So the cause also gets lost here. Moving on. Now, how can we actually combat air pollution given all these gaps, given what government is already doing, but we are not seeing visible results? So in our experience, and I'm sure you would agree that there are two forces at play which can help combat air pollution. It's a dual battle of government and citizens. It's a 50-50 partnership. When we talk about government, we talk about urban local bodies. Air pollution is a very local issue. Yes, when we talk about air pollution, we think of industrial pollution, we think of stubble burning, and to our mind, it occurs that, okay, it's a big issue and the government would do something about it. But that's not the truth. The citizens are also equally responsible for combating air pollution, and I would be discussing ways in which citizens can actually help combat air pollution. The major highlight of this dual battle would be that there are civic amenities which citizens feel they lack and which government feel that they are fixing. So the bridge between civic amenities and air pollution might be an answer to this problem, because like I mentioned, paving of roads or channelizing of garbage or waste, these are all civic amenities. If we are fixing these civic amenities, in a way, we are also fixing the problem of air pollution. Just the issue is that people are not sensitized. So I'd be talking about certain strategies, how we can strengthen the citizen engagement as well. Moving on. First, I'd like to highlight the role of urban local bodies, ways in which urban local bodies are actually combating air pollution. They play a vital role in addressing air pollution through fixing civic amenities, like I mentioned. Actions which are taken by urban local bodies in Delhi, one is road repair and maintenance, which also includes certain tertiary areas, certain unauthorized areas, certain colonies which are not regularized. You would have seen those tight roads, those tight colonies. The agencies are ensuring that they even take care of that. Second, there is removal of malba and garbage. Third, prevention of waste burning. Fourth, removing sand piled on roadsides. So it might occur to one's mind that sand piled on the roadsides is just a minor issue, but yes, across Delhi, it is contributing to a lot of air pollution. Then broken footpaths, again, they are also contributing to air pollution. Then greening, if there are barren spaces, huge pieces of barren lands, they are also contributing to air pollution. And lastly, we see that there are those kacha parking lots. the unpaved or unsurfaced parking lots, they also contribute a lot to the air pollution. Now, these are the problems identified by urban local bodies in Delhi, and these are some measures which Delhi government is taking by fixing these issues. Now, potential actions. The potential actions. The first action that probably the government could focus upon is strengthening the private sector partnership, because that would help in capacity building and technical support, and government definitely needs that. Like in my experience, I've seen that there is no proper channelization of resources as well. Hence, private sector partnership could help here. Second, the idea of issue identification. If we are not able to identify the issues, then the government won't be able to resolve it. So we need to enhance the idea of self-issue identification. Thirdly, we can explore some digitization methods, which can probably help connect government as well as people to resolve this problem collectively. Then we can sensitize the senior leadership in these urban local bodies, because what happens is that the ground level officers are working on an issue, for example, paving of roads, but they don't know that they're actually resolving the problem of air pollution. So to inculcate that insight into their mindsets, to sensitize them that they are also helping combat air pollution in a city like Delhi is something what we need. Then we obviously need a robust recognition system, because a lot of government officials are working. Yes, they are loaded with work, but there is no robust recognition system, which also results in loss of motivation. Then, like I mentioned, there were some jurisdictional issues in Delhi. So it is very important that government takes ownership of these issues. The agencies, we call it maps, they are updated on regular basis. Each and every department, in fact, the citizen through the government or agency portal knows what area belongs to which agency or which department and who is responsible to fix it. I understand that this could be very granular information for a citizen to get it, but it is important for government to at least sort this issue out for their own resolution process. And yes, lastly, we need improvement of budget allocation, which is a major issue, nevertheless. Okay, so now a second important factor, which is of citizen engagement. Yes, government needs to work on it, but citizens are equally responsible. But the kind of reinforcement available for a citizen to decide basically to combat air pollution is something I would be discussing, because either the challans are imposed on a citizen or the fining, or they can be rewarded for doing something. So this is a major gap which we've experienced in citizen engagement, and I'll be talking about some actions that are taken by the urban local bodies in Delhi and some potential actions which can actually strengthen the citizen engagement bit. So the first one was, of course, the odd and even scheme. Government wanted people to follow it. Then there was citizen-led air quality monitoring. Then there is an app. So there are apps designed by government. They are accessible to all the citizens. Citizens can use that app to report to government about any of the issues, even the encroachment issue or say paving of road issue or removal of garbage. They can report these issues on the app and the government takes note of it. Other than this, government has also opened the other social media platforms here. For example, on Twitter, India or Delhi Twitter, you would see that traffic police is responding to citizens' requests, because citizens are saying that, this scrapped vehicle is lying here or this road is broken, so just come and fix it. So Public Works Department is also very active here. So government has sort of built a connection with citizens. And next, yes, there are some cleanup drives. Like there is a concept of Swachhata Sarvekshan in Delhi. So in India, so Swachhata Sarvekshan is being undertaken by the Delhi government. Then Delhi government is also trying to promote public transportation. However, the results are not much visible here. But Delhi Metro is one example which shows the success of promotion of transportation in Delhi. And now that we've adopted the electric buses, the situation might improve. Then there are community gardens and tree plantations, which the Delhi government is focusing upon. And then there are some community-led initiatives by urban local bodies at a very zonal level. Now, the potential actions which government can actually focus upon. Government can actually partner with NGOs and engage volunteers for, identifying these issues for them. They can actually empower citizens or volunteers and tell them that you go on ground and you identify issues for us and we will resolve it for you. I understand that it sounds very ideal, but it can be implemented through a concept like Jan Sunwai meetings, or we call it, it's a form of town house forum. So in these meetings, the government meets with the citizens. This is essentially a platform for a citizen to connect with government and to address their day-to-day issues. So this is one very effective platform that could be utilized. Second would be, like I mentioned, Jan Sunwai meetings, the accountability could be enhanced here. So when the citizen is meeting with the government or any bureaucrat, they can address their issues, and going further, they can accordingly respond. Then, of course, usage of boards and banners to highlight the problem of air pollution. Like we see how the advertisements are, it's a very simple idea. There is advertisement on the board. A person looks at it and it is somewhere, there in the person's mind that, okay, this is something I need to buy, or this is what is going on. Similarly, I feel that the issue of air pollution could be advertised. The issue of air pollution could be conveyed to the citizens through these basic things where we use big banners to say that air pollution is causing these many deaths, or Delhi is the one who suffers through air pollution a lot, or, even if there is transboundary air pollution, we can combat air pollution locally. So all these practices, all these issues could be displayed by government. And yes, I was mentioning about the negative reinforcement. Like I mentioned, there is some positive reinforcement for a citizen to act, but there is also a negative reinforcement, which is imposition of penalties. So there are rules devised by the government, but they are not actually implemented on the ground. The famous example is of construction and demolition rules. These rules do say that this is the amount of penalty that could be imposed on citizens if they don't follow the rules. Now, if I am a waste generator, I need to ensure that a waste lying in my premises has some safeguards to it. It is covered, or it is not thrown off just illegally. Like, I don't carry out unauthorized dumping. But for this, government also needs to tell citizens that this is where you can dispose of your waste. So this kind of connection needs to be built. So we can't put the load on the citizens totally, but we also need to aware them that this is the infrastructure that exists for them, and this is how government will help them out. Then this is a very minute thing. It might occur to you as a minute thing, but actually RWAs, resident welfare associations, play a bigger role in strengthening citizen engagement. So government can always collaborate with resident welfare associations, and over there it can actually establish a platform where government is reinforcing citizens positively. For example, in like rendering good services, if a citizen does this, then this is a service available for them. So these are the small measures that the government can take. And lastly, yes, government can use media platform to disseminate information on air pollution. Like it could be print media, social media, but the government needs to engage like very actively on it. And then yes, government can also provide some grants to citizen-led organization for the projects that they carry out. For example, if a citizen community says that I want to carry out segregation at source or organic composting, then actually government can provide grants, or if like they also get grants for maintenance of parks. So all these things could be more like they could be promoted, and government could do more for citizens, and they could aware citizens on this particular bit. So this is what government can do. But now what a citizen can do. Now, I understand that there are only a number of issues which are under a control of citizen. For example, when I talk about garbage and C&D waste, that is where citizens can take control of. But to ignite that awareness in them, government needs to aware them, government needs to build a connection with them, government needs to put in its efforts to make them understand that air pollution is a big issue. And consequently, we'll see a behavioral change in citizens as well. This is also from my study visit to Germany, which was conducted by Hans Seidel Foundation. When we got in touch with one of the municipal officers in Berlin, we found out that segregation at source was actually started back in 80s, and it took they're more than 20-30 years to actually implement it. So it has to start from somewhere for even citizens to act on it. So this is my lead on citizen engagement bit. Concluding my presentation, yes, there is a need to bridge some gaps in urban local bodies implementation strategies. There is a financial crunch. There is a lack of general know-how. The urban local staff should be aware of these issues, and they should be made more aware of how they are impacting air pollution and the financial constraints. Well, as a citizen, you don't have control over it, but this is a gap that exists with urban local bodies, and it should definitely be addressed. And then government could focus on strengthening partnerships with private sector to enhance its resolution capacity and its resolution mechanism. Another part of citizens to combat air pollution, like I mentioned, the sectors which contribute to the air pollution range variedly from dust to transport sector. It includes like waste burning, C&D waste management, etc. In our experience, we've observed that only a few sources are within citizens' control to act upon. But when a citizen acts upon that issue, the collective efforts impacts the air pollution majorly, and hence citizens now need to hold the baton and just move towards combating air pollution. These efforts are somewhere being already carried out by environmentally conscious citizens, but we need to find a way through which government tells people that if you don't do this, then this is actually happening. Like I mentioned, the gap between the fixing of civic amenities and air pollution, that gap could be bridged, and citizens could be made aware that if their civic amenities are getting fixed, then the air pollution is also getting resolved. So this is where I'd like to end my presentation with. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Right. So thank you so much, Ayesha, Mehak, and Raga for these enriching case study presentations. And personally, I also learn a lot from these presentations. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our experts here, Mr. Abid, Omar, and Mr. Karthik Ganesan, who have also guided our fellows with the research throughout for these presentations. So yeah, thank you so much. And I would now like to open the floor for questions. And we already actually have few questions in the chat box. And if you want to directly would like to ask our experts or fellows any questions, so you can either raise hands or post in the chat box or the Q&A box. Yeah, so in the meantime, we take the questions from the chat box, and our first question here is from Dhruv, who is asking, like, as I mentioned, there is a lack of review mechanism. I will probably just post this question again, so our experts here can also, yeah, so maybe I'll just read them because I'm not able to post them. So are there any initiative? Is there a lack of review mechanism? So aren't the courts of law exercising the jurisdiction suitable reviewing bodies, considering the mandatory nature of various rules such as construction and demolition waste management rules 2016? I suppose this question is addressed to Mehak. So maybe Mehak or if not Mehak, maybe Karthik can address this question.
Sorry, yes, I believe Karthik sir has already raised his hand. I think I'd like to listen to him first.
So Karthik, please go ahead.
Sorry, yes, I believe Karthik sir has already raised his hand. I think him first.
Hi, good evening. On this particular one, actually, this is a bit of a classic conundrum, right? Where we are not unsure. I think judicial activism in taking a call on what issues need to be brought to the spotlight and what not is a challenge. In fact, in the case of India, for instance, these smog towers being installed is actually a case of judicial activism where the judiciary took a first step when no issue was required, and sort of came up with the resolution that nothing is happening, let at least a smog tower come up. So in this case, upon the official have appropriate cases against, basic. But the challenge is that
Sorry
given the
to
day-to-day
interrupt you,
job that
Karthik. I think your voice is breaking. Not sure it is just with me or
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
yes. Yeah, it's better now. Thank you.
Yeah. So as I was saying, I think judicial activism in taking up the cases is perhaps will lead to perverse outcomes, as I was mentioning, like Mock Tower.
Karthik, we can't hear you again.
Where if they take, cognizance of all the issues. Hello.
Now I think it's again better. Could you please answer the question again?
Sorry,
Desi
Mehak,
juice?
I'll probably let you probably answer this. Sorry, I don't want the.
Mehak, would you like to take up this question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question for me once again?
Yeah, so here it's mentioned, as mentioned, there is a lack of review mechanism. So aren't the courts of law exercising jurisdiction suitable reviewing bodies, considering the mandatory nature of various rules such as construction and demolition waste management rules 2016?
So I'd say that partially no. I mean, that's not the kind of review mechanism, especially that I had mentioned in my presentation. However, to answer this question, yes, code is taking cognizance of certain activities that are going on ground, like construction and demolition activities, but it's not like if one approaches the code, then only it can happen. Like it's not happening on a daily basis. Not every citizen is going to court on daily basis and saying that, hey, C&D rules are not getting implemented on ground. Of course, there are cases of building approval plans or so and so for construction demolition activities, but they don't actually answer or account for the review mechanism that we need for government. Through these cases, yes, we get a sense of how government is acting upon these issues, but to monitor the daily progress, or say as a citizen, if I've raised an issue and it could be a small issue, I can't go to court for that, but I would need to interact or connect with government for them to actually tell me that, hey, I've resolved these issues. Hence, I talked about some digitization solutions that could be implemented where we connect government and citizens are able to interact with government, or in townhouse forums, like I was mentioning, government people can actually connect with government and get answers there. But courts won't fully answer this problem. That is what I believe. And I hope that
Yeah.
answers the question.
Yeah, actually, this also answered another question mentioned in the chat, which says what actions are taken by Delhi government to engage both local urban bodies and citizens to work together for reducing air pollution. So yeah, thank you. Right. So we have actually another question, which is also on the construction projects which are banned during the smoke season. So like, what is the benefit of that? Um, yeah, so this dispersed source of pollution, which you mentioned in your presentation, would you like to add up on that?
I'm sorry. I need you to repeat the question again. I can't see the
Yeah,
questions.
the question is, are the construction projects banned during smoke season? What is the
Yes.
benefit of that?
Oh, construction activities are actually contributing up to 28% air pollution in Delhi. And the benefit is this only that we would be able to curb air pollution. But how GRAP is implemented is the graded action plan. It is implemented as per the AQI levels. So if the AQI level is severe or if it's poor, then we ban the construction activities during that particular period. Because we don't want air pollution to intensify due to construction activities.
Yeah, so there is another question which is from Hira actually, and so it says, can the emission factors developed for Delhi emissions inventory be shared here, as we are in Lahore working on tier 2 based emissions inventory? It would be great to have regional emission factors. Maybe this we can take up later. And probably Mehak or Karthik can answer that in the chat box. Because we are already running short on time, and next we have our deep dive sessions, which will be facilitated by our experts, Karthik and Abid. So Karthik will be facilitating the breakout session focused on policy response to air pollution, and our other and the theme for the breakout session is eco-innovation, which will be facilitated by Mr. Abid Omar. Yeah. And so I think maybe we can just open the breakout rooms now, and there also you will get the opportunity to talk to our experts and fellows over there. So these two breakout sessions, you will get a chance to choose which one you want to attend. So just give me a moment, and I hope now you all can see the breakout rooms below on your tab among the options. And so I would request you now to please join these two breakout sessions, and we have around 30 minutes in total, and we'll after that we'll come back to the main session and conclude it. Yeah. So you may proceed to the breakout rooms now. Thank you.
So we're going to break this session up into two portions. One is a bit more general. I think Ayesha and Mehak and others, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce their name, have done a wonderful job on introducing the landscape and the problems. And because I am from Pakistan and I work here, I just wanted to put in a few slides about our work and what we find, and also then the differences that we see in other regions, like people from all across South Asia are over here. So it's important to see why one country is in a different position from the other countries. So of course, we all know that South Asia is an air pollution hotspot. You can see that on this map as well. We have a year-long pollution problem. And the area under the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, the Karakorums, is where we have the temperature inversion problem, where all the pollutants concentrate and create all these concerns, which is why we get together. How does it look like in real life? I mean, most of us are in this region, so you already know this kind of picture. This is the same place a year apart. One was on a good air day, and one was on a not regular bad air day, which we have about 4 or 5 months of the year in Lahore. And this contrast is also very important, because when you're living in this environment and you're breathing it, you don't see the differences happening, because the change in the haziness and the pollution levels builds up very gradually and slowly over time. And I keep hearing from people, especially in Islamabad, where they say, oh, pollution's not that bad, but it is. You just don't realize it. You have to look at the Margala hills in the distance, and you're like, you can't see them for half of the year. But because the change is gradual, it's difficult to notice. So how we started in Pakistan is the Pakistan Air Quality Initiative back in 2016-17. We just started using consumer low-cost monitors. We just bought off the market of Amazon and other places, and use those for collecting and, more importantly, sharing data. And Mehak spoke a lot about, the role of citizens, and I think this is one of the key roles is in sharing the data, because without this data, we don't really know how bad the air pollution is. We started, of course, all over Pakistan, but it was really Lahore, which is more polluted than even New Delhi, which has created a little bit of awareness about our pollution issues. But other cities, Karachi, where I live, Islamabad, most of Pakistan doesn't have the same amount of monitoring as you would find in India, in Nepal and Bangladesh. I mean, it's close to negligible what we have over here. So a quick look at the data, like this is from 2017 till 2022. In the winter months, you always see a peak. So every winter you see a peak, but the amazing thing is that these peaks literally last for a couple of months, where the air quality is hazardous or very unhealthy at best. So based on the US standards, based on the WHO standards, there's not a single day and not a single hour in Lahore where air quality standards are met. Same goes for local standards. WHO standard calls for 5 micrograms. Local standards call for 35 micrograms, and very few days are below that level. So I'm going to skip a few slides. We talk about a lot about data, because that's where we are in Pakistan. We don't have any good studies about what the sources are, about emissions inventory. There's a lot of question marks. We don't have many researchers working on this topic. I mean, there's a handful of people in the whole country who've just started working, but we don't really have any substantial published information. And of course, the government source, you can see there's like so many data gaps and so many anomalies. It's really hard to work on that. Talking of another data source, the US consulate in 2019, they started monitoring, and it's important when you look at data to compare the same kind of data with each other. So there's exactly the same equipment at both sites at the US consulate location in Lahore and in New Delhi. On the left, you have Lahore. On the right, you have Delhi, and you can see the pollution peaks are more frequent in Lahore. The duration is much longer. The number of days of hazardous air quality is way more. And of course, the days where it's beyond the index, beyond 500 AQI, is much more frequent. So this is a important message I like to get across to people, that, like, look at us in Pakistan. Nobody's paying attention to our air pollution problems, and we are actually the worst in the world. Lahore takes the #1 spot. But our other major cities, Karachi, Islamabad, Peshawar, are also in the top 10 most polluted in the world. That means you're more polluted than, say, Mumbai or Chennai or Bangalore in India, or way more polluted than Kathmandu and other places. So we find hazardous air year round. I mean, this is just an example of, like, a walking, say, seminar we did, showing with a portable monitor. We do a lot of awareness events at schools, at universities, for kindergarten children even. So this community, the citizens group, has been really instrumental in creating a movement. There was this one story about this group called the Scary Mothers, what is it called? Angry Ammi, they call themselves. And it's a group of mothers, and they have been instrumental in also spreading awareness in schools. Citizen involvement has to be in many ways, like, whether it's with media, whether it's talking to people, whether it's with the government, you have to really engage with everyone, and every voice counts. Just like this, every vote counts. Like every event that we do at a school, whether it's a university student or a kindergarten student, they go home, they talk to their parents, their cousins, their friends, and that is how stories are told and how stories reach the government and impact policy and drive change. So that is a very important part of the whole air pollution issue. And I mean, I'm not going to talk about solutions, but like, this is an example of how outside an affluent urban area in Karachi, like just on the fringes, this is very common to see waste disposal hidden behind a wall. That's a busy street on the other side. That's how that happens. And we really need you, the community, fellows from this foundation, from the Young South Asia Network, is to come together and think of solutions. And that's what you're going to now transition into, that what are eco-innovations? And an eco-innovation is kind of a new term, but it really means anything that can help improve the environment, decrease the impact of something on the environment. But the important part is while providing an economic value, like a business case, a profit model, somewhere where you do those steps where like maybe even spending money or not spending money, but you have an increase in the economic value out of that. And I want to show some examples of eco-innovation. So it can be anything, right? Like it can be a decision to walk, bike, take the bus. That is something innovative. It can be choosing renewable energy, so wind, solar, the ground-based thermal solutions with heat pumps, choosing EVs, doing composting at your home, using low-energy light bulbs. These are actually all things that in their own way are innovative, like, the transition that has already happened from incandescent light bulbs to LED light bulbs, that saves energy by like 90%. But that was an innovation that was decades in the making. But, choosing to take public transport, that is also something you can do. But eco-innovations are complicated at the same time. Ayesha spoke a lot about the problems of transportation. So how can you take public transport in the kind of cities we have in South Asia, where the network doesn't exist, bicycling isn't safe, you don't have buses covering the last mile. So there's a lot of complexities that come into driving eco-innovations. Here's an example of a technological eco-innovation. This is a picture of stubble residue burning. This picture happens to be from India, but this is practiced all across South Asia, that the leftover from farming is this residue which has to be burnt, and then a new seeds are planted. And this burning process is responsible for a spike in the winter months for a couple of days. This helps push us over the edge. It also has a health impact on the immediate communities, besides affecting the entire region. So one major solution for this is a technological solution, which is the Happy Seeder. A lot of us have heard this name because it's been around for a long time, and it's what's called a zero-till method of planting and of reseeding the field, right? So this is one kind of eco-innovation that one can develop and work towards, and there's a lot of funds available to deploy them. They're available under subsidy, at least in India. Even in Pakistan, people are trying to develop something similar. And there's a whole host of solutions which are technological. Like, when you talk about brick kilns, there's upgrading brick kilns to zigzag solutions. When you talk about transportation, like private cars, you talk about transitioning to electric vehicles. But technological solutions are expensive, long-term, and very difficult to scale up, at least in the midterm. Like maybe long-term, over a generation or two, this can be done. So I want to point out other solutions as well. And I think they like staying with the example of crop residue burning. You can also shift towards solutions which are not technological. Here, it's just a matter of changing the way you practice plantation and how you reseed. So there's a regenerative agriculture, which is a no-till method. The crop residue is reutilized. It gives off much fewer greenhouse emissions as well, besides solving the burning problem, uses a lot less water, and there's a lot of other advantages. So I think that's where I kind of wanted to frame the issue, that it's not really just about talking about inventing or a better technology or deploying existing technology. Solutions can be soft. They can be behavioral changes. They can be, taking a walk instead of driving, reducing journeys. Like there's a lot of ways that one can be changed. And to close the circle, like awareness and cooperation is probably number one. Like talking about it is also an eco-innovation, right? Like again, it doesn't have to be technological. Like research can also be innovative. And then like transitioning to renewable energy, it's not just about, okay, let's buy a solar panel and put it up and replace a coal power plant with it. It's about the policies that make those transitions happen. Those policies, which could then be for clean air cities, sustainable transportation, regenerative agriculture. And I write ... here is because this is now where we want to, and together with Ayesha, we want to hear one by one what your ideas are, what your suggestions are. Maybe if you raise hands, that's the best way to proceed. We have very few people here, so we can also just, you can just unmute yourself and start talking.
So I think I'll just start, and Raghav, I also see Raghav in this group. Abid, what is the potential for using the crop waste for actually making biogas? Raghav talked a little bit about how a successful biogas has been in Nepal. So do you think that is something that we can implement in Pakistan as well, like using crop waste?
It is already done on a certain level, right? Like a lot of industry within Pakistan and actually everywhere across South Asia is using crop waste to fire their boilers, which in turn are used in industrial processes, are used for electricity generation, and it's a very common practice. And a lot of crop waste is used for that, like bagasse is one crop which is specifically used for that. You also have leftovers from sugarcane processing, which is used for that. You can have a whole power plant around using crop waste. But the issue is not, again, the technology. It is a policy to enable that to happen, because there is not enough value associated with that waste, that after whatever is consumed, where you find economic value. And that's the crux of eco-innovation, right? Like it's not just about the solution. The solution has to provide an economic value. So whatever is left over, it's cheaper, or rather more valuable, to just get rid of it by burning it than by utilizing it for something else.
Thank you. I see that Basham has raised his hand. Basham?
Yes, and that's something else, Abid. That's something else is using that the crop waste as the biofertilizer, So I have been working on the soil regeneration from 2 years, So we are taught that if we have planted wheat, so you can just take out the wheat grains and just all the leftover that you should just merge back in the soil, that becomes the fertilizer. The best use of that crop is to give it back to soil. That's the best thing. We must not burn anything but only the sugarcane waste, nothing else must be burnt out, you know.
Exactly, and that's what I was
Yeah,
talking about in the
yeah,
presentation, is about you have to
mm,
maybe rethink agriculture so there is less
yes,
waste, because the waste that has an economic value is already being used. And because
mm-hmm,
I was just last week visiting a place, because I've never seen how this crop residue waste is used and reused, and it's actually a mess. Like
yeah,
when this residue, because it's dry, it flies everywhere. It's bad for your
mm-hmm,
lungs, like
mm-hmm,
bad for
yeah,
your throat. Like I had a sore throat the next 2 days after just being around
mm-hmm,
this waste pile for
mm-hmm,
maybe 10 minutes. And
mm-hmm,
and then I also learned is that if you make the same waste and convert it into briquettes, for example, where you increase the energy density by compressing it, you increase the energy density substantially, and also that, which means that you're burning it more efficiently, you're getting more energy out of it. When you burn it more efficiently, you get less emissions from it. So all of these things, I mean, these say, technological solutions have a whole host of associated concerns or issues which are not technological, which are about the policies, about environmental regulations, about health and safety regulations, which have to be put in place simultaneously. Most of us here are from South Asia, and we're talking about this air pollution problem as if there are no solutions. I mean, like it's been years and we haven't been able to solve the issue. But look at China. They found a problem and they solved the issue very quickly because they had the right policies and the right framework. In fact, one of the key authors of the Chinese clean air policies wrote a book about it, and the book is all about economics. They study the economic cost of every solution and devise policies so that the cost is negated through whatever other means. And unless if you get the economics aspect right, whatever policies you might have in place is not going to work.
wow, that's great. And Abid, you know what? China, I see that like they are so close to the nature, you know, because in nature nothing goes waste, you know. There's nothing. So like everything is used, reused and reused, you know. So when I see the Chinese doing stuff, you know, I see nothing's going wasted, you know, and they're doing the maximum benefit out of everything, you know. And thing is that how can we, is there somebody in government of Pakistan, like state-owned, that we can, you know, the farmers, they are, they're kind of persuaded by the agricultural, how to say that, like the pharmaceutic, you know, some kind of agriculture pharmaceutic. They want them to use their fertilizers, you know, they want them to use their pesticides. So they are persuading the farmers to burn their residue, you know, because they know that this is the best fertilizer. You know, if they use it, there will be like kind of less use of their production, you know, their glyphosate and everything, their poisons. So how can we do something like that? Like, you know, I am meeting the farmers, you know, most of the time, and I'm just being told by them that the company people told us to do that. You know, the company who is that, the Suncrops, the Angro, you know, they are telling it.
Oh,
So how
that
can we
is
fight
a
like
whole
that?
another
Yeah.
story, because
Mhm.
there are a lot of case studies about how the Green Revolution has happened in
Mhm. Yeah.
India and Pakistan, and that whole Green
Yeah.
Revolution was driven
Mhm.
by companies who introduced new kind of seeds and new kind of planting patterns
Yeah.
where
Mhm.
more
Yeah.
fertilizer and more pesticides were being used. So actually, crop residue burning is a relatively recent phenomena, which kind of started. The seeds were planted, say, in the 80s, and they started to scale up in the 90s, and only like
Mhm.
now in the last 20 years, it's become a major problem. It wasn't a problem
Mhm.
earlier. So
Yeah.
maybe we take some other questions. We can go alphabetically. Sana Khan, do you have anything?
Hi, Abid.
Hi, Mehak, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
Karthik, you're audible.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Hi. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for this. So, apologies. I mean, I have an internet connection that's a little unstable. So, as I was mentioning, right, policy response to air quality in the Indian context really happened in the year, I would say, 2019. A formal policy response. Of course, we've had the Environment Protection Act and we had the Air Act and the Water Act now for close to 40 years. The thing was, air pollution was always seen as industrial pollution, right? So industrial pollution was basically the primary source of air pollution for multiple decades, and effectively all regulatory power to address air quality was with with the pollution control boards. Now, unfortunately, as many of you would know, today that is not the case, right? Air pollution is a multi-sector issue. It constitutes transportation. It constitutes issues like what you heard from Mehak on construction and waste demolition. It consists of waste burning, right? Which is in the case of, for instance, Nepal, where Raghav is also working on solutions. And the problem is that the pollution control board is no more equipped to actually respond to the challenges in each one of these sectors because they do not have control of actions in these sectors under their right? They can issue consent to operate and shut down industrial facilities that are violating it. But industrial facilities only contribute between 15% of pollution that we see in our cities. Of course, we're not even talking about the broader rural areas. Policy and regulation, of course, applies equally to the entire landscape. But the challenge is that we're not able to sort of think beyond our cities because that's where we think all our population will end up being in the coming decades. And as a result, the measurement and the action, everything is sort of, focused on the cities itself. Now, after sort of like the huge human cry that happened, when we talked of, I think when our German colleague introduced India and the regional country talked of how we were among the top, 1, 2, and 3 polluted countries in the world, right? That is when it really hit home, right? It required ultimately the government to sort of be, I think, shamed in international media for them to first come up with the metric of the air quality index, the AQI that Mehak is talking about. India adopted it only in 2015 for the first time to sort of try and get a semblance of a formal acknowledgement that this is what the AQI is, this is how we are monitoring and measuring. And from there, the monitoring infrastructure is basically grown in leaps and bounds, right? So Delhi itself, for instance, has close to about 40 regulated monitors, and there are about um, three monitors across the country today. Each costs close to about $250,000. Right? So, and the policy response is that as a result of the measurement and as a result of the need to address it was basically this national clean air plan, which basically targets the states of the country and sets reduction targets for all of them. Unfortunately, again,
It seems there's again problem with Karthik's connection, right, Mehak?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm texting him back. Just give me a second.
Hi, I'm back. I'm back. I think there's a bit of a drop. I'm sorry. This is really unexpected. Never happened in the past. Yeah, as I was saying. So I think ultimately, while we have recognized that pollution is a challenge, and we've got this plan where 130 cities have been notified. The challenge comes down to all this while, right? For about 60 years or 70 years since independence, none of our urban local bodies and agencies had the mandate seen air quality because they have seen always the KPIs, other metrics. How do you suddenly convert them to people who have a focus on air quality and who are able to come to terms with what air quality measurement is? And I think unless that happens, we will sort of be in this. There is notionally a policy and there are targets, but to be able to meet them, and the kind of change that we will see will sort of be almost autonomous. So I'll sort of pause my remarks here. I hope you heard from more.
I think we have lost connect.
Yeah, we lost Karthik for a moment. I think he's just trying to join again. Just wait for him to join.
I think of all days, today he has the electricity issue. Oh, just a second, I'm calling him again.
Deepak, hear me again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can somebody
we can
give me
hear you now.
confirmation, please?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope you heard my opening remarks in some way where I talked about how there has been a change from the role of the pollution control board to basically having this as a distributed responsibility across multiple agencies, right? So you've got your town planning agencies, your urban local bodies, your regulators for other sectors, right? Everybody has a role to play. So as a result, a policy making and the coherence of that is a much more complicated issue today, and our institutions have to deal with it. It's the financing that is actually required for these institutions that sort of uncertain. In India, we got some finance as a result of this the 15th Finance Commission, which actually acknowledged that there are development limits.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Could you maybe please switch off your video because it's still lagging sometimes?
Yeah, please, no, absolutely. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you. So I was saying that the 15th Finance Commission in the case of India recognized that impact as a fair quality. So it was for the first time that I think a constitutionally appointed body
Karthik, are you there?
Deepak, right. I think I'll just connect with Karthik and find out the prompt for the breakout room session. I'll type it in the chat. Just a second.
Sure. Yeah.
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry about this inconvenience, but I have the question from Karthik and I would initiate the discussion here. So the question for the breakout room session is that, one, what is the policy response from each of the countries that you are representing to air pollution? And what are the gaps that you have experienced or witnessed with federal, regional and city government? So if you could give us a status update on your city, your country, how your country or state is reacting or acting towards it. If you want, I can use a whiteboard or we can type it in the chat, whatever is. We have Karthik.
I can hear Mehak. Floors open really, right? From India or Pakistan. So sort of what's it that you've seen the response from your city and state or team, and you take up as to why is it that what is it that will actually get them from them. So anyone, I say remember, the machine.
Karthik, I think what you just said was not clear. There was
Karthik just
lag.
repeated. Yes, Karthik just repeated the question. I hope I'll just repeat the question for everyone's convenience again. What is the policy response from your respective countries, and what are some gaps that you have witnessed with your federal, regional, or city governments? So we can start the discussion.
Yeah. In this key
Actually, I
stage,
am. Can I just make a
sure.
point? I'm actually from Delhi only, so more or less what Mehak had covered in her presentation, that's what the response has been from my city. And the gaps that I've already mentioned, I felt because I am myself from a legal field. So I felt the gap that was there was more of the implementation of whatever goes wrong and the non-compliance with the rules and the statutes. So which is something I felt was, as Mehak had also mentioned, that there is a lack of review mechanism as far as these rules are concerned. So that was one thing which I felt is, in my limited knowledge, of course, of this issue, is something that remains a little bit of gap in the implementation of what the measures have been taken by my city, particularly Delhi.
So what do you mean by gap in implementation, right? What do you mean by gap in implementation? I mean, do you feel that the agency that's doing it is not doing its job, or they're doing it and that the recourse to the citizen in the event it's not completed is not there?
So in most cases, the work is being done, but I am particularly highlighting the issues where these compliances are not being done. So let's say when we talk about the C&D rules, there are a number of compliances, and as far as I am aware, rules are mandatory nature. So when we say that like you mentioned, that are the agencies not really complying with these rules, or are the agencies not really doing what they're supposed to do, in maybe like 80% or 70% of the scenarios, that work is being done. But I am particularly talking about the other 20 to 30%. And in that case, what I'm trying to highlight is there a reviewing body which would probably overlook something which the public bodies are supposed to do mandatorily under separate statutes. So in case they're not able to do that, in case there is non-compliance there, then what is the recourse that we as citizens, or for that matter, I think we've lost Karthik again. So what is the recourse that we as citizens have under the acts particularly?
Yeah.
I can also add in here. I think I am the only person in this group. Hi, I'm Sara from Pakistan. I'm one of the YSAN fellows, and I don't work on air pollution, so don't expect details. But I mean, of course, like rest of the South Asia, we have really sophisticated documents which talk about, like, took a lot of international money to make those documents and hired consultants and this and that, so they look great on the papers. But, and I mean, if I talk about the program, so there's a national clean air program which was launched in January in 2020 in Pakistan, which sets emissions, and there's a renewable energy department, and it had to focus on the attention on promoting the use of renewable energy, wind, solar, etc., etc. But the problem is that no matter how sophisticated these plans stay on paper, because of lack of enforcement, because of lack of political will, then there's also resource constraint. And the biggest problem that I see in the government, now that I'm working with them, I can see there's a clear lack of coordination and collaboration between them, which then, leads to issues in data and lack of public awareness, this technical challenges then. So, and then of course, not to forget the legal and regulatory challenges. And when we talk about pollution, I think especially when you're talking about in South Asia context, we are forgetting the cross-border pollution, which is that both India and Pakistan especially are getting affected with each other's pollution. And this is why I wanted another breakout room in this session which I would like to discuss that what can, if there are any initiatives or agreements which are in place, or if they are in under consideration for addressing transboundary air pollution issues. And if not, then how can new regional corporations and international partnerships, for example, HSF has brought all these young people from South Asia who are concerned about this issue together. So how can we play a role? I mean, it was excellent presentation from my my friends, and it's always so nice to hear these excellent solutions. But we always assume that like the government is listening, and sadly, I mean, the government is not. They're too preoccupied with things that actually don't matter in the long term. So I think, it would be really interesting. I mean, perhaps we could have another session, and maybe this is also because YSN is also new and growing and learning. So maybe, our future talks could be under the assumption that the government is not listening, and maybe there's nobody else to help, and maybe there is this, this 11 or 12 people in the whole of South Asia trying to bring a change. Because, it's just very important. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you, Sarah. I think you echo the sentiments of a lot of people in India as well, right? Whereas this feeling of despondency that policy response is grossly inadequate and not supported by adequate funding and capacity, right, at the level of the implementation agencies. So here is where I would like to sort of provide one intervention, which again I think speaks to policy broadly, which is that, see, ultimately, we've got to realize that in our countries, resources are always going to be constrained because there are going to be always 10 competing governments for every rupee that we have. So in what I think is imperative for entities like us, right? I mean, if I'm assuming that many of us work in policy research at some level, is for us to be able to sort of showcase what are the co-benefits of addressing air pollution for various other line departments that actually exist. So let me give you an example right now, right? So for instance, in the case of Sub-Saharan Africa, and also in the case of, I think, in South Asian countries as well, there has been now clear demonstrations that a reduction, for instance, of 5 microgram per meter cube of air pollution, PM 2.5, actually gives you as much benefit, for instance, as a series of nutritional challenges that need to be addressed when it comes to kids. For instance, whether it is to do with, deworming, right? Or any one of these for removing parasitic infections. Air pollution impact as equivalent as, for instance, any of those. So stunting and wasting can actually be reduced by the same amount as by addressing air pollution. Now, are our policymakers and our health departments, for instance, cognizant of the fact that this is something that's a lever that's available to them? Until they are not convinced of this or even aware of this, what is going to happen is they're going to be sort of using the money to address their conventional ones, whereas air pollution is going to continuously take a toll on the health and the and mortality across the spectrum. Right. Similarly, for instance, when it comes to, for instance, you said, Pakistan has a lot of plan for solar. So does India. For instance, research has already shown that higher levels of aerosol content in the air reduces solar generation by up to 7%. Right. So imagine for every rupee that you're spending on putting up so expensive solar plants on polluted days, and which is, if that becomes increasingly so in the future, if you're basically going to lose up to 7% of your overall generation, that's a huge economic impact. So if the private sector is basically what is going to be installing these solar panels, then they need to be made aware of the fact that, hey, you know what, you need to take this uncertainty. And if solar becomes that much more expensive, your country's plans for energy transition are also in tatters. So we need to really sort of sensitize and give the right level of right signal. And I would say it has to be an economic signal. Ultimately, we have to understand that in addressing any of these, we have to cater to the political classes, incentives, right? I think, if a political class is not incentivized to act, clearly because the economics and what they feel that the rest of society demands is not in line with addressing air quality. And I think that will happen only if you sort of internalize this. So this is one suggestion that I have, because, we are also constantly faced with in India. And I think only recently we've got some money to be put against it. But even that is unfortunately being spent on very superficial solutions, right? So I hope that was a little...
I because we have this floor and we have this opportunity to talk, so I would like to, I mean, I really like this point of sensitizing, but I'm an economist. I work on economics data. So I was interested to look at how does air pollution affect the GDP. So one way of doing this would be looking at people's healthcare spendings and connecting them to their savings, because in economics, whatever you're not saving, you're actually making it capital for the future. So, because a country like ours have really slow saving rates. In fact, Pakistan is the lowest saving rate in the whole of South Asia. And I wanted to see that if you connect these both, and if you reduce, I was trying to show the government that, see, reducing air pollution is not a ethical thing to do, it's the economical thing to do. Save money by doing this. But because of the lack of data, so for example, you can even if you can find data on PM 2.5, what you cannot find is public data where you can connect healthcare expenses with those. So
Absolutely,
I saw
absolutely.
a similar study where they did it in China and they linked it with credit card expenses. But because that's a society which believes in research, which believes in information, it's easy to do that. But in a society where, so I think another, sensitize, and number two, push for transparent data.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points that you've brought in again, Sarah. So let me just come in on this one. So incidentally, the Clean Air Fund, I'm pretty sure the Clean Air Fund also has a mandate in the Pakistan geography. They're focused globally and they're based, I think, in the UK. It's a fund of funds. They've incidentally supported a study on GDP impact of air pollution in the Indian context. But let me also say, that if you do a macro level study that looks at GDP impact, the main challenge is that much of the impact actually stems from loss of lives, right? Loss of lives is the biggest contributor to that GDP impact, because ultimately, that is where the overall sort of contribution comes from. But unfortunately, the main challenge in the Indian context is that the government does not believe mortality rates associated with air quality are as they are portrayed in research, right? Unfortunately, the cohort studies that are actually needed to do them, while they've happened in the West, there have been sort of similar exercises, but not of the same scale. And as a result, the convincing evidence, to get convinced evidence, to the policymakers, whether it's the MPs or the MLAs, that air quality does indeed result in the loss of 1.67 million lives, has been a challenge in the Indian context. There are some more underway which are more rigorous. The medical community is working at it. But at the same time, right, what I would argue is this: more than just understanding GDP impact, I think we need in wealth status broken down to look at what is the cost that the rich, for instance, are bearing. And you can actually do a stratified assessment of what exactly is the impact of air pollution. Because if the data is not available, for instance, for the poorest, who are also unfortunately hit, what you will find is that the cost that is borne by the rich in order to sort of create that bubble to be able to live in a cleaner environment, right, is also phenomenal and is large enough to mandate a centralized response and not sort of privatize the costs, right? Because ultimately, I think it is the rich that is the constituency that the policymakers also keen to sort of work with and address. And if we are able to sort of create evidence for wealth quintiles, right, like we have for so many other economic aspects, right?
Yeah,
so, for instance, looking at what is the impact of air pollution on the rich when it comes to their expenditure, what, for instance, the opportunity for, and through that, I think there might be a better outcomes and possibilities that the policymaker may address it, because I think we are not necessarily sort of looking at the overall population, right? So this is something I felt in the Indian context may be very useful, because, for instance, the air purifier market in India is, if I remember correctly, 4 years ago was apparently $500 billion, right? And all of this is basically stuff that's imported from overseas, right?
Right.
So there are, of course, I think there are, of course, clearly ways in which you can look at data that will actually sort of speak to proxies in terms of what costs it imposes on the system. But I think you need to look at it in a well segregated manner, not across the board, because then you're diluting. I think who is the main stakeholder there. Yeah. Maybe here some other colleagues.
I would request if this, all the researchers, mostly they are pointed towards the lowest quantile, and maybe that's why they're not very interesting for masses. But if there is a research that actually tells that this is how much money the rich is losing, that's very interesting. If you have a paper like this, I'd request if you can share. I'd be more than happy to read and see if something can happen out of.
Yeah, so Karthik, we have
Sure.
next Rajat here who has raised his hand. So Rajat, over to you.
Sure.
Yeah. Am I audible, first of all?
Yes, Rajat, you're audible.
So
Yes,
basically,
yeah.
when we work on environmental issues like, say, air pollution, waste management, it is very important that we have public action from above and public action from below. Above is from the state and below is from the citizens and civil society. And for that to happen, we need really accessible, understandable, and updated data for the public, which in a lot of cases are not available. Like for AQI, for example, may be available, but where do I get data on, say, source segregation at the ward level in the town that I'm living or the city that I'm living? Or what are the sources of air pollutions at the ground level in different cities? If we have that kind of a data, I don't know if currently we have the bandwidth to do that, but if we have that kind of a data, it can bolster the interventions of citizens and civil society. So I think that is something you can take up with policy if that is possible.
Yeah.
That's the first aspect that I would like to add. And the second is when things like air pollution happens or waste issues happens, we all know this. The burden of it is actually disproportionately felt by the marginalized sections, which are both economically and socially. And for example, one data that I would like to quote is last year we did a study on the pulmonary lung function of sanitation workers, waste pickers, and the security guards. And the majority of them, 80 to 90%, had abnormal lung capacity. I mean, lung functions.
Abnormally low lung function.
Yes. And how do we address that? First of all, we need to tackle the air pollution at the surface level, and also, undertake measures that that can in a way mitigate them, like health insurance or providing masks or raising awareness. So we need to think of that as well. So just like to add these two to the discussion, and I want your opinion on these.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Great. Obviously, I would love for others to also comment on. I mean, the first one, right? I mean, the first one. Let me comment on this because I love getting into the data side of it. Rajat, right? So Rajat, one is too much data, right? And I think in the case of air pollution, at least for instance, in the context of India, right? Let me say that there is enough data. It may not be at the ward level. There is enough data for us to act on sources because there is some level of I would say that background pollution that we know comes across wards, across cities, across states, and the sources of those are very clear as well, right? Our waste management, and those are basically what I think Mehak indicated, for instance, in our presentation.
Sure.
And maybe the numbers may be a little higher and lower. And ultimately, it speaks to the capacity that you have in those respective departments that those sources belong to. And unless we're able to fix it, right, we can go on a spree of collecting data, right? And we can get lost in hyperlocal monitoring, what's happening in my backyard, all of it, and no action will happen because there are macro level sources which are even slightly beyond a ward, right? If you think of transboundary between, for instance, countries, you have transboundary across states, you have between, one large urban agglomeration to another large urban agglomeration. And it'd be virtually impossible because the costs that are needed. And by the way, right, if you look at the monitoring density today in the West, it's not that big today. The West does not have a great monitoring density because they had a period when they monitored, they acted on it, and now they've basically fixed it. So they don't have the kind of monitoring density we are asking for, right? So when India says that it needs about 4,000 odd continuous air quality monitors, it is because today we are in a situation where we lack it. Now, if it is going to, I want more monitoring. Where's the action going to happen? So we obviously have to divert our attention from data regarding what sources of air pollution are. And I think there will be certain pockets where you'll always have some confounding factors, right? Where you will find out that, suddenly during the nights and certain days, you find the nitrous oxide that was not there during the days resulting in certain pollutants lingering to the night. So those are all sort of quirks of the, atmospheric chemistry that we can probably address at a later stage, right? I would call it a first world problem, so to say, if we get there. But until such a time, there are clear and present sources, right? How do we have neighborhood construction and demolition practices? If you find that your neighbor is basically demolishing his house and collecting it due practices, your expectation is that you will also do that, right? When your time comes, and both of you are basically think you're actually making a win, you're losing. So how do you basically have, and you talked about top down and bottom up governance. Ultimately, it's also about the citizens realizing what is the action that is needed on their part to be able to contribute to the success of policy, because the government does not have eyes at all levels for it to be able to monitor. And even if you did complain, do they have the capacity? So now you need to find neighborhood level sort of systems that basically ensure that everybody ultimately complies with C&D regulation and C&D waste management, right? If they don't, and if they choose to sort of dump it in an open lot, or perhaps in a nalla that is nearby, there has to be sort of social there has to be social norms around it, and we have to understand what the social norms are around waste, right? Let's talk of, for instance, since both India and Pakistan are reasonably feudal societies, right, in the sense that there is this huge income inequality between the people that serve the middle and the upper middle income and the lower classes. Let's look at, for instance, waste burning that happens in the winter. Do we find that societies are willing to actually provide proper heating solutions where they don't have to rely on firewood and waste to keep themselves warm? And do they realize, for instance, what the impact of that switch will be? And what is the social norm around it? Do they think that that is not their responsibility because it's too expensive, or that they don't care for the experience and the comfort of the people who are working for them, right? And if they were to understand that this has repercussions on their own health, their own children's health, what are these societies likely to do? I think assessing some of those, and sort of being aware of the current sources of air pollution that have been established in literature will probably a more impactful intervention, Rajat, right? Than, I think, going after more data at a granular level to convince people. Because even after the data, they're going to probably, it's going to come down to the action that you need in these different sectors, right? So I hope that was sort of gave you a different perspective of how I see data. Yeah.
Right. I get your point. Yeah. So I was just saying that it should be more accessible and understandable. That's all. And basically, like you had the Green Delhi app. I don't know if it has helped or not, but at least we have a platform at least to raise mechanism. I'm not sure about the effectiveness of it, because I remember once I raised a complaint, it was solved within like 30 days. I don't know if it's because of my complaint or because of Delhi elections, but when you have ground level say systems where you can monitor and you can raise complaints, it what do you say, increases the citizens' trust on the process. So that's all. That's what's
absolutely, yeah.
Sorry,
who do we
just
have?
to mention here, we have another just like 3 more minutes. So maybe we take up another question from Dhruv.
Yeah, we also have a colleague from Sri Lanka here. I see. I think
Yeah,
Lakshila, if she has
Lakshila.
any perspective there.
Yeah, Lakshila or Ganesha. Ganesha is also here actually, and she's from Delhi. And either of you, if you have also any question or remarks, so please feel free to share. But yeah, in the meantime,
yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Lakshila, we can hear you.
Yeah, so one thing is, I think for the case of Sri Lanka, I think a little bit along the lines of what Sarah mentioned, because I'm also an economist by training. We do have a lot of policy documents, and it is becoming a topic of much more attention now than compared to maybe, say, 2-3 years ago, because yeah, pollution is real concern because of climate change, and all sorts of other things. But at the same time, there is a lot of policy documents being developed. But how do we, I guess my question would be, there is a lot of actionable documents being developed, but that's where it ends. There is no actual practical application of these documents or practical applications of these plans. Because from, say, a government perspective, they would develop these plans, these lengthy documents, and publish them, but there is no actual authority or body that would take the responsibility of initiating these plans. So how do we kind of cross that bridge, essentially? Because at the end of the day, the plans are only worthwhile if they're actionable and if someone does something about it.
I have a sort of a bit of a stock response to this particular one, Lakshila, right? And I think it's along the lines of what I mentioned to Sarah earlier. So, you have this emerging concept of the just transition, as you may have heard, right? You hear this word being used very often, just transition, just energy transition, to refer to this new energy system that's going to come into play. And you will see that as part of this just energy transition, right, most advocates now want to sort of address a whole set of, social and economic malaises, right, that were pervasive during the earlier or the current regime. Now, the challenge is this. Like with this, why do we want to put all the burden of addressing, for instance, labor rights, right, women and gender equity, whether it might be, income inequality, all these issues are basically being clubbed under this umbrella, and we want to address them as the system undergoes a change. So I feel, the problem of, for instance, looking at everything exists in documents but not necessarily in practice is a problem that is pervasive of multiple things across our economies, right? In South Asia, I mean. So, to sort of try and figure out a different solution for air quality, or should we be figuring out a governance mechanism and an accountability mechanism for all economic sectors and create a new relationship, new social contract between citizen and executive? Unless we're able to create that, right, I think, trying to address this in silos for air quality, for health, and for energy will, I think, just take the wind out of us. So perhaps, trying to see what the economy-wide case for changing the relationship between the citizen and the, the social contract between the citizen and the executive and the legislature is probably something that's worth exploring, because ultimately what we see is accountability is missing today. And if that accountability were to be brought back through better involvement of the citizen and creating forums that are more persistent and not, something that's for a show, I think we'll definitely see better outcomes. And obviously, I think this has to start at the third level of governance, right? Which is, as in India, we call it the Panchayat Raj. So which has to be at the local village level or at the local city level. Because, interacting directly at the state level is too much of a task, I think, for the average person, as I think somebody mentioned earlier. This is my take on, sort of going from this, I think, getting away from this issue of everything exists on paper, but nothing is actually being delivered. Does that make sense, Lakshila, or do you feel that is sort of too, it's too difficult for us to sort of consider?
I agree with you partially, I think, because specifically for the case of Sri Lanka, I would say we have a lot of NGOs, we have a lot of volunteers and community organizations working to preserve the environment, because we
Right.
are a very environmentally diverse country. We have a lot of rainforests and all sorts of
Right.
things. But at the same time, we have like the NGOs or the CSOs have worked towards signing policies or getting people's signatures to get policymakers aware, because I think at that level, at the grassroots level, there's only so much that can be done. And like, for example, we can plant trees, we can help in reforestation, but at the same time, if there's no policies, for example, in Sri Lanka, people litter everywhere. There is no policy, like, for example, in a country like Singapore, you get charged a huge sum of money for something as simple as throwing a piece of gum, versus that doesn't happen in our country. So there's only so, like, I can be a conscious citizen, but I can also advocate for the next person to be a conscious citizen. But like, beyond that, I would say, if, for example, there's another person who doesn't care about the environment, and they might only be motivated given a legal incentive. If you're fined, say, $100 for littering, or if you're fined $100 for cutting down an important tree. So there's, I think, only so much that us collectively can do, because there has to be some incentive from the policymaker side, I would say. At least that's my opinion.
I agree with you. I think it's a valid point. It's a fair point. I think there is definitely a divergence between Sri Lanka and India here. And the point goes back to the fact that when I speak to, for instance, a municipal commissioner on this particular issue of littering, for instance, they said, I do not have enough people to go after finding all the people who are actually littering. There aren't enough people in the system to actually enable me to do that. Is technology going to be able to do that? For instance, you're automatically tagged, there's face recognition, and a challan gets sent to your, your email ID in the event you're caught littering in a on a CCTV? I mean, do we want to sort of have that system? And will that system be cost effective and functional is a question. But I think the point you make is very valid though, Lakshla. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah. I realize we're probably, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to whatever you mentioned regarding basically lack of resources for government to actually tap into, say, waste violators. I think one of the potential solutions that could be opted for is if, like we mentioned earlier, if government actually partners with NGOs or voluntary groups, and like there was a deployment of environment marshals in Delhi. So if something of this sorts could be implemented and they work for the government to identify such issues or spot such violators on ground. So maybe that would also help government and that would also ignite that awareness in citizens.
Yeah. So should we just close the session now, because the other group has also closed and they're back to the main session, going back to the main session.
Sure, please. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Yeah, just a few seconds. I'll just. You are also here, right? Karthik, are you there?
Sorry, I believe Karthik is rejoining.
Okay, just yeah, so before we conclude this session, I just would like to ask our expert if they have any final remarks. Yeah, so Abid, do you have some final remarks?
Well, one of the key messages in our breakout session about eco-innovations, that they're not only technological solutions, they're also to do with behavior change, with policies, with a whole host of factors. So it's not just about putting a new technology in the hands of someone, it's how you use it. And without all of that big framework, these eco-innovations don't work.
Yeah, thank you so much. Karthik, you are back again. So
yeah,
do you have any final remarks?
I think I heard a bit of, and I think I heard some despondency among the participants that were in the group. I think the overall feeling was that there was not enough of a policy push. Even if there was, it was in mere documentation and not in the way the policy was implemented in letter and spirit. I think there was some divergences in terms of how do we get that implemented in letter and spirit. Now, is that through capacity? Is that through financing? And is that through social norms, right? Or is that through better engagement between citizen and policymaker? I think there are a few options that can be explored. What I can certainly do is I think share a bunch of resources that have looked at the reasons why some of these programs have failed in the Indian context, because there have been some efforts made. Hopefully that will sort of be of use to colleagues Sarah and Lakshila, who for instance brought up some of the points, and Dhruv as well as Rajat. But yeah, thank you so much for for letting me sort of intervene and drive that book. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karthik. Thank you so much, Abid. So with that, yeah, we just wrap up this session, and thank you all for participating and staying until so long. And yeah, I hope you had an enriching discussion. And please, if you have any further questions, please feel free to write to us. We would be happy to answer them. Yeah, and we would forward your questions to Karthik, Abid, and our fellows here. Yeah, so thank you once again, and have a nice day. Thank you.